Hi, everyone, and welcome to IBTM Connect. My name is Sophie Whittaker, and I'm the marketing manager for IBTM Asia Pacific and China. Thank you for being with us today. Today, we have Mariska Kestelo, founder of World of Mice. With more than 18 years' experience in tourism and the mice sector, Mariska is an entrepreneur, public speaker, and past president of MPI, and an authority in the industry. In today's session, Mariska will discuss how you can unlock the power of B2B influencer marketing. Thank you for being here. Stay safe, and please join me in giving a warm welcome to Mariska.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for joining the session today. Let me share my presentation. Today, I'm going to speak about B2B influencer marketing. The topics I will discuss today is actually who am I? Why did I start actually specific in the meetings and events with my company? What is actually B2B influencer marketing, which is a question we receive a lot. The perception of influencer marketing, the definition of influencers, how can I find, or where can I find the right influencers to work with my company? And of course, how do you create a successful campaign? And last but not least, I will share you some inspiring examples from before the crisis and after the crisis. And I will give you some tips and suggestions. And also, of course, I will finalize and wrap up with the topic ROI. And of course, there is time for questions. I will try to summarize everything in around 35 minutes, and then I will go to Q&A. So if you have any questions, please address them in the chat. Even if we have passed the 45 minutes, I will come back to you and answer to all your questions. So a little bit about me. My name is Mariska Kestelo. I'm born and raised in the Netherlands. This picture could have been me, but I couldn't find any picture of me as a young child. This is actually the traditional costume that has worn by my grandmother in the region in the southwest of the Netherlands, which is called Zeeland. I grew up in a little village, and I knew already as a young child, I knew that I wanted to explore and travel the world, which I also did. I studied tourism, traveled and worked around the world. I lived in Europe, North Africa, and the United States. And now since a year, I'm back in my home country in the Netherlands. Some people think that I have a familiar face. I've also been involved in MPI, Meetings Professionals International, where I've been very active in the board of the Belgium chapter and where I've been 2 years active as a president. But I would say enough about me, because I want to share my passion. I think it's always important to share why did I start with my company, or why do people in general start with their companies. I started my company because I was working as a freelance event planner. And when I attended shows like IBTM or IMAX or other events, and I spoke with hotels, destinations, or venues, and I asked as a freelance event planner, why should I organize an event in your destination or in your hotel or your venue? And very often, and please don't be offended, I talk in general, often people came back and saying, yeah, because we have 400 hotel rooms, we are a 3-star property, and we have 10,000 square meeting rooms. They often came up with facts and figures and not talking about the inspiration or ideas what the venue could actually or potentially do. Coming from the travel industry, where I've worked in for 10 years and saw the upcoming trend of travel influencers, where they share nice pictures and stories about the destinations they have visited or where they have traveling to, I thought, why don't we have something similar? Because there's no TripAdvisor, there's no Booking.com where you can Google, I'm looking for a venue or I'm looking for a destination. who has international flight connections, especially from Western Europe, where I can find 4-star accommodations, and which is perfect for a technological event. All that information we can't find on TripAdvisor or Booking.com. So where do we find that information? We find that information through other people or by, of course, attending events. And there is so much knowledge in our industry by all the people who are listening today. And that knowledge, those experience should be shared. So therefore, I came up with my company in 2016. I launched the idea in 2017. I launched my company, Word of Mice, because we believe that one little mouse can create a huge impact. So several mice, word of mice, can create a huge impact. So in 2017, my company was born. B2B influencer marketing. What is it exactly? Because a lot of people talk about it, but actually they don't know the difference. So if I may say it in a nutshell, I'm Dutch, I'm very practical, I'm down to earth. If I would say is to stay and to remain top of mind at your desired target audience. So I will repeat, B2B influencer marketing is to stay and to remain top of mind at your desired target audience. The biggest difference actually between B2C and B2B influencer marketing is the knowledge part. Because we select people based on their experience, based on their knowledge, and not on the amount of followers. So therefore, influencer marketing is connecting with people who can spread your message on a high level within your desired target audience. And the second thing that you should also remind is influencer marketing is not just one blog post or one Instagram post. It is actually integrated in your strategy and it's combined with all your other marketing activities. So with your PR, of course, with your events, even with your webinars or online events. And it's a long-term project. So at least we recommend to do at least campaigns for 6 months or longer to connect with your target audience and to stay and to remain top of mind during that length of the campaign. B2B influencer marketing, a lot of people think that it's only about business outcomes. We want to have business, we want to have leads. But actually, B2B influencer marketing is much more. Perhaps your company is not known in a certain market, or you want to open a new hotel, for example, in Germany, where it's the first hotel of your entire chain, and where you don't already have an audience of followers. So perhaps you're looking for awareness, you're looking for engagement, or you want to work on your reputation. So B2B influencer marketing, of course, can also be related with getting leads, but you know as well that the lead time in our industry is quite long. We don't make the decision today to organize tomorrow, and especially in these challenging times. We don't decide tomorrow that we're going to organize an event, for example, in Singapore or in the United States. So the lead time is quite long. So therefore, it's important to engage with the people also on a long term, and hopefully after 6 months or perhaps even a year or longer. In that time, you will remain top of mind, and then the people will choose for your product, for your service, or for your destination. The challenges. I mean, there are a lot of challenges why people don't have B2B influencer marketing as part of their strategy. And I completely understand, because in general, there's a negative perception about influencer marketing in general. And a lot of people don't know there's a huge difference between B2C and B2B influencer marketing. Like I said before, in the B2C market, so the consumer market, where they choose and pick influencers based on the amount of followers because they want to sell as much as possible. Where in the B2B market, we select people based on knowledge, based on their experience, or also, of course, based on their personality. and based also on their trust. And also, the impact and possibilities of influencer marketing are quite unknown. And it is B2B influencer marketing is very tailor-made, so the possibilities and the impact is for everyone, of course, very different. And I will go further in that topic later on. But influencer marketing is not just one blog post, it's not just one Instagram post. It's much more so. It's really influencer marketing should be aligned with your long-term strategy. Why am I so passionate about influencer marketing? And I will align, say, my passion because there are so many advantages. And the very simple first advantage is because it's tailor-made, because it's aligned with your strategy. And every strategy of clients, of course, are very different. You focus on a different target audience, you focus on a different goal. So even if you have seen a campaign which was really interesting or exciting, you said, hey, I want to do something similar, but perhaps for your product or service, it's not the same because you have different goals, you have a different product, and you offer a different kind of service. So influencer marketing is really tailor-made tailor-made towards your strategy. The second thing is really interesting. You can focus on one specific target audience. And also it's very important to be very specific and not saying, I'm looking for event planners from all around Europe. That is, of course, possible, but in Germany or in the Netherlands or in Belgium, we have a different communication. In Germany, they probably would prefer that you would address or do your communication in German, or in Holland, we don't mind to have communication in English. And in Belgium, you have to pay attention because there are official 3 languages. So which language are you going to choose? So therefore, it's very important to very specific to one target audience because they have different needs and they have a different type of communication. And of course, they're also based, perhaps focus on one or another specific social media channel. What is the huge advantage? If you exhibit at a trade show, you're not always sure that you will find or you will talk with the right potential clients. But this influencer marketing, you are very specific with the person that you're going to work with. And there is a huge selection and criteria before you select the right person. So therefore, you know already that you will be in touch with your specific target audience. And the third point is very important, is the data. Now more than ever, and we are more online than ever, I would say it is very important to know what are the needs of my target audience, when are they online, what is actually the tone of voice, what is their interest, and also if I have published a blog post or if I have created a podcast, do they listen to it, or what kind of people do read my blog posts or do listen to my podcast. So it is very important to gain all those insights, not only through, of course, Google Analytics or other measurement tools, but also by using the influencer. Influencers are experts and they know what's working online and they know what type of content is dedicated for the target audience. So they know what's going to work and what's not going to work. So the data is a huge important item to start with an influencer campaign. Like I said before, today we are living in very special times, and we are more online than ever before. So the need to start with influencer marketing is actually a perfect moment because we cannot see each other face to face. We meet each other through Zoom or via any other online tool that we have that I'm talking to you today. So therefore, you should also shift to more online. It will be part of our daily lives. We will travel less, especially for the upcoming year or maybe years. We don't know how the future will look like. So therefore, it's important to continue the conversation with your target audience and to remain top of mind. If I found very recent facts and figures that 63% of the consumers have actually spent a lot of more time over the past 2 months viewing and posting on the social media platforms. And of course, also you're seeing more and more content from the influencers. And the last sentence is, this has also increased the level of trust among influencers. And this is really important. In the B2B environment, it's all about trust. We do business because we know each other. We do business because we trust each other. And the trust factor has become more crucial than ever because we live in such uncertain times that that we want to do business with partners that we can trust and that we can rely on. Definition of influencers. All the people who are joining today, and perhaps if you will view the online session afterwards, we are all influencers from the meetings and events industry. Just we have several different types of influencers, and it all depends if you would start with a campaign, what type of influencer you might need for your product or brand. For example, I'm also an influencer for IBTM because I have shared it on my social platforms. So, like it's here on number 5. Event speakers. Yes, you can also use your speakers, of course, for your event. If you're, for example, promoting an online conference or an online event, use those speakers to share that in their platform. It also raise their profile, and it makes them even more like create more awareness for them as a speaker and as a leader. I would say as an industry leader. There are, you have social media amplifiers, so people who will share, for example, your content. Professionals, we used to usually work with professionals or industry practitioners, but like I said, it all depends what kind of influencer you might need for your product or brand. Industry call, which is the last one mentioned. Call means key opinion leader. This is something that is used a lot in China or more Eastern countries. Key opinion leaders are usually people who have years experience in the industry, who would probably not write a blog post or share an update about your event, but they would like to be invited, for example, to share their thoughts in a podcast, to share their thoughts on video, or, for example, in an interview. And an interview, for example, can be created by another influencer. So sometimes it's also needed a team or different types of influencer who can I would say push or make your story visible and aware at that desired target audience. How do you select the right influencer? It's a question also I receive a lot, but actually it's quite simple because a lot of people focus on, I would say, the amount of followers of the influencer, but please don't. You can better have an influencer who is an expert in your niche or in your industry, and who has, I would say, who is very professional, who is also posting professional content on their Facebook, and also in a consistent way. So the influencer, first of all, must have an added value, must know your product or brand, or at least have something familiar with. And also, of course, it must be a win-win-win. It must be a win for the company and a win, of course, for the influencer, but also, of course, a win for the persons who receive and read the content. Influencer marketing is not rocket science. Everyone can create and can set up an influencer marketing campaign. Just it's very time consuming. It takes time to, first of all, to create a professional brief and to set up a proper strategy to find the right influencer. Now, in these days, we tend to work at least a bit different because we need to pivot much quicker. But in, say, before COVID-19, we needed 2 to 3 months to find, to find also the right persons and to create a proper strategy. And also, of course, excluding then the time to execute the campaign, which is on average, 6 months, sometimes longer, sometimes a bit shorter. So how do you create a successful campaign? First of all, it starts, and this is the first and the most simple, I'm not saying the most simple step, but the first step, but also the most crucial step. If you start with an influencer campaign, it's very important, first of all, to create a strategy. What is your target audience? What, if you would work with an influencer, what would you like to get out of this campaign, and how are you going to measure the success? So those are the important questions that you need to think about. If I start with an influencer, what would I like to get out of it? For example, if I want to attract a younger audience, would it be interesting to launch, for example, or to start with TikTok? Or I'm not visible yet, I'm only focusing on LinkedIn. Perhaps it would be interesting also to start an Instagram channel. There are lots of possibilities, but please write down what you would like to get out of the campaign. Then, as soon as we have received the brief, we are going to select the right influencers. And this process is very different from a B2C than from a B2B, I would say B2B environment. We are going to find the right influencers. And for example, we select 3 to 5 people, depending on the number of influencers that the client wants to work with. And then we send the brief towards the influencers, and then they have the time to write a proposal. So it means that the influencer is going to think about the product. I'm just mentioning now a brand, or Marriott or Hilton. They're going to think, what can I do for the Hilton, or what can I do for the Marriott? And they are going to write a strategic proposal. So it means that the influencer can give their input, can give their advice, and share their expertise before we even start. Because the reason is why? Because we work with experts. These people have at least 5 to 10 years working experience in our industry and also on social media. So they know what's working. And the reason why we choose to work with them, because they have that specific expertise. They are in touch with the audience that we would like to get in touch with. So after we have received the proposals from the influencers, we are going to send them to the client, and it's up to the client to decide with which influencer they are going to work with or not. As soon as we have come to an agreement, we are going to start with planning perhaps the activities. What is the influencer going to do? When are the activities planned? How much work is it going to be? And of course, we provide also the influencers with a professional contract. Then we are going to start with the campaign. And during the time, we are regularly in touch, either with the client and of course with the influencer. And especially in these challenging times, we need to be a very short, I would say, lines, because so many things are happening nowadays. If we need to adapt the communication or tone of voice or the message, therefore it's important to be in touch on a very regular basis. And that is also a huge advantage. You can change the content of the campaign anytime, because also the influencers are not looking to harm their reputation. No, they also want that the communication that is going out is professional and doesn't harm their followers or their reputation. And at the end of the campaign, we provide a report. Have we received, or have we achieved our goals? Have we achieved our outcomes? And are there any suggestions perhaps, or interesting facts that came out of the campaign that we are going to share with the clients? For example, suggestions for a follow-up campaign from the influencer or from our side as well. In the beginning of the presentation, I shared what is the influencer going to do? how do I have to see if I'm going to work with an influencer? Well, before COVID-19, the focus was, I would say, 80-20%. So 80% of the work they did was online and 20% was actually offline. Online, it meant, for example, writing blog posts or perhaps doing interviews, of course, site inspections, tailor-made fam trips, just only for the influencers where they're visiting venues and locations which were only interested for their audience of followers. Now we have come to another, now we are living in another time, and I see a lot of opportunities, for example, where influencers can even leverage their expertise, for example, in a podcast or, for example, in a webinar, where you have the opportunity to connect and reconnect with your partners, with your clients, or with other people, and really create a community of followers. And again, to remain top of mind. So webinars, podcasts, this is all possible if you are working with B2B influencer. But again, it all depends of your strategy and the outcome, and of course the outcome of the campaign. And of course, the events. It's very interesting if an influencer can also, for example, do a brief presentation when it's online or offline, or if in the future we're able to meet again, finally, face to face. Why don't you ask the influencer to, for example, to share a presentation and to share the update of the event also in their network of followers, and to attract perhaps a different audience than you always had before at several trade shows. I would like now to share a couple of examples. One is from outside of the industry. I thought it was interesting to share also something which is not from our industry. And yes, I know they are big names, National Geographic and Microsoft, but I found it still interesting because the focus was not on sales. So Microsoft Microsoft said we have a lack of people. We have a lack of people with technical skills, and we are looking for more women to encourage them to choose for an education, to choose for a school, to study science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. So they said, but they're already working some fantastic women all around the world in those specific jobs. But we want to make them visible. We want to put them at the forefront. So they asked National Geographic to take pictures of women working in specific jobs all around the world, and they launched it on International Women's Day. It was a huge success. Of course, yeah, if you have two big partners, I would say it can't be, well, it's not always that it is a success, but of course you have a large amount of followers. And what I want to say here is also they followed up. So Microsoft also invited some of the women where they share in a workshop or presentation more about the work and more about the things that they did. And again, the focus here was not on sales, but actually on awareness. How can we encourage more women to apply for these type of jobs or to choose for the right education? So these are actually the results. Yeah, of course, 3.5 million likes in one day and a huge reach of 91 million followers. If you hear something on the background, my neighbors have actually a party with children, so I apologize for that. Seeing, but that's the charm of working from home in these times. Another example, which is perhaps not really, I would say, it is yes and no related with marketing or influencer marketing, but I just want to share you some examples of ideas that destinations and convention bureaus can do or have done during this crisis. For example, in Amsterdam, I live only 20 minutes from Amsterdam, um, where they said, okay, you can't visit the city, but we have virtual tours where people are sharing what you can see, what you can do in our city. So you still have the opportunity to explore the city, but in a virtual environment. And what I also found very funny is actually in the Netherlands, I'm not sure how it is in other countries, the pub quizzes were very popular, and perhaps also in the UK. And they said, we're going to launch also a pub quiz. Very interesting, as one of the biggest and one of the most famous musea. The pub quiz is not really, I would say, in first sight, it's not related with the product or service, but of course you will get questions about the museum, about the history. So again, you remain top of mind at your audience. So this is something that you could also launch and think in a creative way about your product or service. And another suggestion that I would like to share with you is, we are living now in different times. So also the event planners who are listening have actually different needs if they would organize an event. They're looking for example, more focus on hygiene, technology, but also on cancellation policies. And the Monaco Convention Bureau shared already directly on Twitter. I know it's not I would say, the most attractive topic we will talk about, but it's such an important topic, is about cancellation policy, that they have adapted their rules and regulations concerning for upcoming events. And this is again a way how you can create that bond and take that bit of uncertainty away of potential planners that might come towards your destination. So there are lots of ideas, lots of content that we can talk about, today in an appropriate way, without harming and without, I would say, neglecting in what kind of a crisis we are in today. The goals of influencer marketing. Sales is not the top priority to start with an influencer campaign. It's so these are actually the 10 goals. This slide is already a year old, but I think it's still appropriate nowadays. So if you want, for example, to work on your awareness, work on your engagement, or to reach out to a new audience, these are all possible with influencer marketing. I would like to share some suggestions if you are looking for ideas or inspiration. If you said, yeah, we are interested in influencer marketing, but what could be a red line? What could be a storyline for our upcoming campaign? Of course, content is key, and I'm still convinced about that. And second is, of course, humor. Humor works. We are now also in times where we are not always positive, and where we sometimes struggle to sometimes to get through the day, and where we see all the hurdles and all the challenges that we have on a personal and of course professional level. So humor works. If you have a campaign with a sense of humor, we all want to have sort of a distraction, but of course in an appropriate way. What do we need now? For example, I share the idea of the Monaco Convention Bureau about the cancellation policy. So think about, what does my audience need? What do they need? Do they need information about my destination, or do they want information how we have pivoted our hotel? What have we changed in our, if you arrive in a hotel, or what have we adapted on level of technology? Can we really have a Zoom meeting in a closed room where you don't have any noise from other people? So those are the things that are interesting items that you could use as a red line, as a content for your campaign. And of course, involve a good cause. I think we are now in a time of solidarity, where we also want to support others. So involve a good cause is always, I would say, always a good idea. And if we're talking about budget, I know I know a lot of people are suffering with their budgets. Don't think that influencer marketing will need a huge budget. That is again a misperception. If we see it again from the B2C market, where influencers get 100,000 or 50,000 euros or even more just to publish one post. It depends what kind of influencers you need. Perhaps you could use also in these times your employees and let them speak out about your product, about your service, or how you have changed your hotel and how it is now again friendly again for groups, conferences, and events. And quantity versus quality, yes, I keep on saying this. Don't focus on the number of followers, but focus on his or her experience, and focus also on the personality and the working experience. ROI. It is a huge challenge, and I'm very well aware it's not easy to measure direct the outcome of a campaign. Of course, if you have received a couple of leads during the campaign, that is possible. And it also depends on, of course, of the length of the campaign. But there are several ways to measure the ROI. First of all is the content that the influencer has created. For example, have they created a podcast channel with 10 or 20 editions? Podcast will remain. So people will listen even after a year, after 2 years. And it can be that after 3 years, this podcast or become trending. So the value of, I would say, the value of the content is still out there. And also think about content that will remain. So that is not related perhaps with a trending topic, but people also will talk about this crisis, COVID-19, in 2 or 3 years. Another way, a simple way, is of course to measure engagement, likes, and comments. And of course, to measure the impact of the blogs and the posts through through a platform, through Google Analytics, and of course through the influencer. The last two ones is of course to have special code or UTM codes where we can track how people come towards your website or come towards your blog, so that we have a better insights how the traffic is going towards your website, and that in general works very well. And in this way you gain even more details about your target audience. And the last one I want to share is we call it dark social. We cannot measure everything online, unfortunately. We always say we want to reach the C-suite, so the decision makers, the CEO, the CFO, who sign or give their final approval for a project. It's not needed that the CEO will read a blog post, but if you have a very good campaign and your employees or your managers will talk about it, it will be discussed during a meeting, and then the CEO or the CFO will be informed about your product or about your service. But it doesn't mean that they have read about your blog post. For example, we have done a campaign with Austrian hotel brand, and the influencer who was involved was working at IBTM, and a lot of people recognized her and mentioned directly also the brand of the hotel. These people not always have liked her updates or comment on it, but perhaps they've seen it in the feed and now they address it to her personally. This is also not something that you can measure, but it is still also a huge part, I would say, of our business. I would like to wrap up because I see I go a little bit over time, so we have still 6 minutes for the question. So I would like to summarize. What story do you want to share at your target audience in these challenging times, and how do you want to remain top of mind? And also, please don't forget, continue with the communication. Don't stop with the communication. I know it's hard to find a tone of voice, but please continue your communication. I always say it's like a marriage. You always have ups and downs. If you have your first discussion, you're not going to leave your wife or husband after the first discussion. You will go through it and you will start the communication and you will sort it out, hopefully. So that's the same in this crisis. Keep the communication going. But what kind of communication do you want to send out at your desired target audience? Now I will go to the questions in the chat. I have here 6. Oh, there is again directly, I would say, directly a very good question. What is the best campaign you have seen? That is actually a challenging one, and I need to think about it because I've seen a couple of campaigns. I will come back to that later. The second question is here: how do I convince a new client / destination that has never made an online campaign that they should start doing it? Well, I had many conversations with clients from all around the globe. And if people are not active on, I would say, on social media and they need to start, then an influencer campaign might not be the right step at this moment. Because we don't have the opportunity to meet each other, I would say, face to face or at offline events. You need to have a certain base, I would say, a certain basic amount of followers on your social media channels. Or the second option is if you say, okay, we want to start on Instagram, we want to start on TikTok, we will get an influencer involved who's going to post in name of us. We call it a takeover of the social media channels. That could also be an option, especially if you don't have all the expertise in house. But where the influencer could share his or her expertise also of social media with the team. Then another question is, what is the best KPI to monitor? A good question, but it all depends on the outcome of the campaign. There's no best KPI to monitor. So I would say first, and again, what are your needs? What would you like to get out of your campaign? And then you can monitor it. I can't say what is the best KPI because every client is different. Then another question: you're talking from the perspective of a destination, but what if you are the influencer or destination ambassador and want to promote yourself? What should include your presentation to gain that client? But if you're talking about if you are the influencer destination ambassador, want to promote yourself, what should include your presentation to gain the client? I think it is a very good one, and I think it's not only from a destination ambassador or for anyone else who's working in the industry as a freelancer and wants to promote his or her company. I think it's all about expertise, it's all about authenticity, and it's about trust. Those are the 3 key items: so authenticity, knowledge and experience, and trust. Because we do business because we trust each other, and I think if you can show your expertise, if you can see what you have done in the past, and why the client should work with you and not with someone else. Especially in these days, I would not focus on sales. I would not focus on promotion, but I would show your expertise, and especially nowadays, open your doors for free advice or for, I would say, not saying directly free support, but show that you're there to support, and also show that you think in a long term and not in a quick win, because that doesn't work in our industry. We know each other quite well, and therefore I think it's very important to think also on a long term. So I would definitely talk about your expertise, and show also your added value that are matching with the goals and the values of the client. Then I have 2 more questions left, so I think I will have time to address those. Hello, how can we get leadership buy-in and invest in influencers? Yeah, that's a tricky, I would say, a tricky question, because how we can leadership buy in? Leadership, I mean, I talk about thought leadership. You can only gain it, I think, through an authentic way, is really by showing that you have working for a couple of years in this industry. It's not something that you, I would say, can have from one on the other day. It is by doing presentations, by being interviewed on podcasts, by showing that you're there online. It doesn't need to be that you have to post from one day on until the other, but also showing that you are sharing good examples and that you motivate and stimulate others who are following you by, for example, and also giving free advice and perhaps free webinars. And how to invest in influencers. I think it's not just a matter of investing in influencer. Again, I think it's good to how, if we start with a campaign, what would like to get out of it, and what would be the best person to present our brand, to present our product, and what would be the best, I would say, leaders to present our product. And then the last question, as you mentioned earlier, influencer marketing tends to be associated with B2C marketing. As such, I found it challenging to identify potential influencers for B2B purposes. How would you suggest initially approaching potential influencers in a way that suits the B2B objectives? Yes, indeed. That is a very good question. If you are working in a B2B environment, it's not just that you can pick up the phone and call someone that you don't know. So it is very important to build up those relationships with people who are already ambassadors, and not just give them, or say, a cold calling and said, "Hey, I would like to work with you. I have a proposal for you." So it is really finding, I would say, an appropriate way to reach out to your people, or perhaps you could invite them, for example, for an event, or saying, "I would like to." I think we have something in common. Could we perhaps schedule a call? So I think it's all about, also about the common sense, and also about the human approach. How would you like to be approached? How you also don't like to have a cold call from someone that you've never heard of. So think also about the common sense if you would like to work with someone, and also think about a common interest or mutual benefit that you have, even if it's by mail or another way that you reach out to the persons. And sometimes it's better through Instagram chat or through a LinkedIn message. I think LinkedIn is still the best social media channel to reach out to people in, I would say, in a bit of mix of informal and formal way. If you have any more questions about influencer marketing, I'm happy to support you. I would say, especially in these challenging times, my virtual door remains open for free advice. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show, and please don't hesitate to ask any more questions. So thank you very much, and see you soon. Bye bye.